Man, this is scary. I don't know why, but it's frightening.
So back to working on the Trike today. We're gonna finish trellising the frame for extra stiffness, and I'm gonna fix the steering because it's ugly. So I'm gonna come up with a better option for that.
So Ethan's little joke about me going back to trellises and not liking it worked in my favor, because now we're on to an easier section and they're essentially 45s. So it's going way better. I think I've done 4 correct ones and then 2 mess ups, but it's only been like 3 hours opposed to like this was literally a day.
Made a lot of progress towards this looking less terrible. Doing away with these things because they're hideous and also kind of sloppy. So instead I took 2 old wheel bearings from the front of the kernel and made this steering stem. So this splined bit and this are actually off of one of the snowmobiles that we've killed over the years. Actually same as this one. So that's funny. But anyway, so I just made a shaft that goes through the middle of this, 2 bearings, tube, so it looks all nice and clean, and I can weld the tubes that support it anywhere in this whole part. So the plan, roughly, is to have 1 tube come straight back from here at kind of the same angle as this, but 1-inch diameter, and then 2 tubes that are lower down come back to this, and then trellis the whole thing, so it'll look cleaner, and it'll also just be way stronger and tighter and less sloppy and just better in every way. Should have done it this way from the start. I was just being lazy. Make a plate for this, trim it down, weld it together, and then hack this ugliness off and start putting this one on. Well, Sam keeps going with the project stiffest frame ever.
Have a winner for the Rogue Fab tubing bender, and it is Nathan from Utah. We have sent you an email. Congratulations, Nathan. For all of you who entered, thank you so much for your support on the channel. It really helps us make these projects possible. And for everyone who didn't win, we have a new giveaway coming up very soon with a really exciting prize, a bunch of new merch coming, so stay tuned for that.
Got this plate welded onto the steering shaft. It's all welded together, and I've got it tacked on with this bar here. So still working on what's going to look best, but the idea is this bar here is the same angle as this one, and then 2 bars like this coming out at the same angle as these bars and tying into it a little bit lower like that, and then doing some trellis work there. But the part I'm having a hard time deciding on is having these mount like that. It kind of makes sense on the corner of this, but then it doesn't line up with any of these other trellises, and that's kind of annoying. So still working on that. I'll come up with something that looks good. Either way, it looks drastically better than it did, and it is better. Simpler and cleaner and stronger, and you know, all the ers.
So this is a convertible that we lifted for Gambler last year, and we totally trashed it, jumping it like, I don't know, like 20 times. Oh my! We broke the struts off, got those back on,
but it's lived its life. So if it makes some parts for the funner builds, I think that's a life best served for it at this point. We're trying to steal the clutch and the clutch master cylinder to either put it on the Trike or the 2J. So, and then I'll look at the brake, but I don't think the brake and the brake master cylinder will work because these cars have like a big old brake booster and we don't need that. So we'll at least get the clutch, pedal, and we'll see what we can do with that.
So at this point, we're just keeping it around. It's the same engine and transmission as in the turboed BMW, so that's gonna need a spare engine eventually. And now that the snow's gone, probably pretty soon here when we start using that again.
This kind of figured out, and it turns out the only way to make it look good was to put a bend in these to make them line up with this corner here, and you know, just bent pieces of metal just look cooler than straight ones. That's what it boils down to. Also, I decided to ditch the single push rod here for the tie rod and go to 2 cables, basically just because it'll be cool. But also it'll be symmetrical. So I took this piece of tie rod here and crimped the crap out of it onto that cable. And so that'll go like so. And then up to here. And because there's 2, no matter which way you turn, one of them will be pulling. And you know, the only downside to cables is that there's no backup. You know, if one of them breaks, then you're screwed, but the same thing would be true for a single push rod. So, well, it'll be better because this old rod here, when you're pulling on it, it's nice and straight, but if you're pushing on it, it can jiggle and flex. Well, not so with a cable. If you're pulling both ways, it's gonna feel the same both directions. So that's a benefit as well, but you know, mostly it's just cool and ridiculous, which is what this Trike is all about. Almost got my cable steering finished here, and obviously we will do thorough tests of the strength of these before we actually drive it, but I've just actually taken a piece of the tie rod and just used these, which are actually made for crimping. I think they're called swages on cables, and so normally you do it with aluminum, but what we have here is steel, so that's what we're gonna do, is crimp the steel on here. The first couple of crimps don't quite get it. You gotta do it a few times on the biggest size. Spin it around a couple times so it crimps nice and pretty. And then switch to the next smaller size after I crimp a good size section of it down. And so far it seems to be working. Because the aluminum being softer, it smushes better around the cable, but then again, the steel is harder and therefore more resistant to being unsquished. To put it very scientifically. Alright, time to see how this cable steering is going to work. It certainly looks awesome. I'm going to have to trim these bolts off on the bottom for maximum steering angle because they run into the chassis there. But, you know, and can be good at just about everything. Man, that was a pretty good estimate on getting the length of that one.
Yeah.
Obviously they're adjustable, but...
Dang.
So a little bit of work may be required because a little bit of adjustment at zero, or I mean at all the way turned, there's a little bit of slack. Even when at zero, it's tight. So it's just a little something with the geometry going on there, but nevertheless, it looks frickin' cool. And it works. trellis this section because it's just a little bit wobbly, and with the tension that these cables put on it, it needs to be a little stiffer. So I'm gonna trellis it up with this 1/2-inch tubing, since you know, we don't need anything more than that. And so we'll start with that one and then go zigzag here, something like that.
It works.
Oh yeah. It's plenty stiff back here. Well, we were getting ready to roll this thing down the hill, and this time we're gonna go down the big hill to properly test everything. I was just tensioning up these cables, getting them so that they're tight all the way through, and I think I got it. So just a matter of making them equalized. So we're turned all the way to the left right now, and they both got, you know, just no slack, but not major tension. In the middle, we've got a little more tension, so a little bit of like preload, if you will. And then all the way right, again, we've got no slack, still just a little bit of tension. So should be good.
Man, this is scary. I don't know why, but it's frightening. Here goes! Man, this is scary. I don't know why, but it's frightening.
That was crazy looking.
Yeah, that was kind of frightening. Probably because it's like the heaviest thing we've ever rolled down the hill, you know? It's just a lot more stuff if things go wrong.
It looked like the fork was actually traveling though.
Was it? Yeah.
It was even coming back down after it went in, which I was surprised. I thought it would just go in and stay there.
Right, because of all the weight, yeah. No, it feels pretty good. It's definitely bouncy, so I don't know if these shocks need adjustment or if it's just a matter of like not enough weight back here, so it's just hopping with the tires. So yeah, the back end, but we'll also have a lot more weight, so it might smooth out a lot, and having an actual seat would make a big difference. All I've got for a cushion right now is
Grind hard hoodie.
Yep. But yeah, the steering didn't feel spooky. I thought it would. I thought it'd be like twitchy, but in fact it was the other way around. Like when I went to steer here, it's actually like quite some effort to steer at speed. I thought maybe it'd be kind of like, you know, I mean, it shouldn't be twitchy because we have an insane amount of rake, which is like kind of the equivalent of caster on a regular steering setup. So, which should mean high speed stability. So yeah, it's not gonna be easy to steer with all that weight up front. Ideally, if we get more weight in the back, it might help a little bit with the distribution, but we're not really gonna have much weight behind the axle, which is the only way to actually get weight off the front. So, weight reduction on the engine? It's our best bet. No, it's not the end of the world, and we could maybe get some slightly wider bars, you know, so that you could move your hands out just a little bit farther if you really needed more leverage.
And that was downhill too.
Yeah, it was downhill and not under power. And under power, obviously, that'll transfer some weight off the front end. But, I mean, it wasn't impossible. The kernel was way harder to steer before we put power steering on it, and still sometimes is, so it's not bad. And yeah, the front felt nice and soft. The rear suspension was just bouncy, as I'm sure you noticed.
Yeah. That's the scary part. Like, we were still going really fast right to the creek. I'm like, oh, I hope the steering works.
No,
good.
I wasn't. That wasn't a problem. I was just waiting because I was just waiting to see how much I'd slow down before I yanked the. You know, I didn't want to turn the steering wheel too hard at full speed. So, Yeah, I mean, that was a success.
Rescue for that one. I hit this tree, the drone bounced back all the way to a tree on this side of the creek. I'm really glad we didn't fall in the creek. And I'm totally dry. How do you beat that?